Thanks for joining us. Welcome. I'm Jenny Southern. I am the editor, founder, and CEO of Globetrender, which is a travel trend forecasting agency based in the UK and an online magazine dedicated to the future of travel. Okay, in this session, we will be discussing how sustainability starts with supporting communities. I would love to introduce you to our panelists today. Firstly, we have Kieran Haslam, Chief Marketing Officer for Diriyah Gate, which is a new giga project being built in Saudi Arabia. And we have Zina Benchek, Managing Director EMEA for Intrepid Travel. Steve Scott, EMEA Market Leader, Future Communities at GHD, which is a professional services advisory company. And then at the end, welcome, we have Sheikh Ibrahim Al Khalifa, Deputy Director of the Arab Regional Center for World Heritage in Bahrain. Just to give you a little brief introduction to today's topic, I wanted to talk about the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which are an urgent call for action for every country in the world, both developed and developing, to take more responsibility for the longevity of the earth and its people. The goals recognize that ending poverty and other deprivations must go hand in hand with strategies that improve health and education, reduce inequality and spur economic growth, all while tackling climate change and working to preserve our oceans and forests. I won't list all the goals here today. You can obviously go onto the website and have a look at them, but targets include ending hunger, securing clean water for all, making cities safe and sustainable, creating sustainable consumption and production patterns, and taking urgent action to combat climate change. Central to being able to achieve many of these goals will be uplifting and empowering the people that are around us. Enabling communities to flourish is key to sustainable travel, because how can you do better for the wider world until you and your family are nourished and educated? And I wanted to talk about how I recently watched an online masterclass with Richard Branson, and he said something that really resonated with me. He said, if every person, company, shop, factory, home, college, and office drew a circle around their surroundings and pledged to do something to help those inside the circle, together we would make the world a better place. And I think that's something we should all think about. Okay, let's get started with the panel. So Kieran, my question to get things started goes to you. How does Diriyah Gate balance the need for economic development with supporting local communities and preserving cultural heritage?
It's a great question, Jenny, and just before... Oh, are we good? We're good. Just before I answer that question, I wanted to touch on two quick matters. The first is I'm representing my dear colleague and our incredible CEO, Jerry Inzarello, today, because sadly Jerry couldn't be here and he wanted me to impart his sincere apologies for not being able to make it. Something very urgent came up that kept him in Saudi and he couldn't fly to Dubai. So apologies from Jerry. I hope I'm a reasonable substitute. The second thing is a gentleman was meant to be on this panel who was a dear friend of Jerry's who sadly passed away. He was a larger-than-life character who many of us knew in the community. He was always at these trade shows. And I just wanted maybe for all of us to give a round of applause in celebration for a life which was lost too early, and in appreciation that we won't be able to spend any more time with him, and that's Herr Schleifer. So if we could... Thank you for that. So coming back to the question, Jenny, what's really important the world over, and probably something that we celebrate each and every day in Diriyah, we're building a city, and it's a city potentially of the future, in tune with Vision 2030 Saudi Arabia. To build a city, you have to be right for a very wide diaspora of life, from little children, people worshipping, people visiting mosques, people going to hotels, to tourism, academies, and education, amongst just the few. When you do that, you have to try to set the stones so that you are doing right by future generations. So first and foremost, within our organization, right from the very top, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, all the way through to everyone in our organization, our focus is on trying to do the best we can in the here and now for the future. Whether that's biodiversity and the greenification, or whether that's withholding and amplifying important elements of tradition and culture. And I know that our dear colleagues are going to talk a little bit about heritage and culture and the importance from sustainability in a moment. To do that, we look back to the origin story of Diriyah and what it was. And this is not unique to us. The world over, everyone is looking back in time and saying, what did we do back then that we can extrapolate and take lessons from and do in the here and now to return a brighter future for the next generation? Fortunately for us, Diriyah was established as the first Saudi state. It was sets itself up on an established agricultural society of farming, of green space, fertile soil, very much in harmony with nature. We have to be in harmony with nature in what we do going forward. Sustainability can be measured in so many ways, but the key to how we want to hold ourselves to account is saying, right, holistically looking at sustainability means cultural sustainability, it means localization of jobs and of resources, and it also means that quality of life within that city, within that urban development, has to significantly be better. So our measurement to do so is not to say we've planted this many trees and we'll plant this many more. It's to say 20 years from today, is obesity rates in children reduced for those people inhabiting Diriyah? Do we have a life expectancy which is prolonged or longer? Is there a high propensity for working families to have families, to start families, to have more children? So with that comes the promise of our master plan. It's a pedestrianized city of the future. It encourages recreational activity, outdoor living, as a consequence, that healthier lifestyle and that healthier approach to society as well. So that's sort of the key way. And I think constantly going back to our past, seeing who we are in the present and saying, what can that mean for us in the future, is key to how we can be sustainable.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you. We'll hear more about Diriyah Gate in a minute, and I have lots of questions about that. But I'd like to move to Zina. Now, Intrepid Travel is known for being a leader in sustainable travel. But how are you specifically working with local communities to build a force for good tourism business?
Sure. Can you hear me well? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the short answer is that we want to ensure that the revenue, the value that we create with our business really benefits the communities that we visit. And that's done in several ways, from the local employment that our tours will create, from the local teams that we will be working with to create those tours, to the local leaders that will be leading the tours and taking our customers and our groups around the country, to the supply chain that we manage in the destinations that we want to ensure that is mostly locally owned, minority owned, women owned whenever we can. It is also about spreading the tourism dollars evenly in the country and not just support one area over another, and combat over-tourism in this way by visiting local villages, unknown areas in destinations that you wouldn't find by yourself on a guidebook, and that Intrepid will take you to, and really enabling that spread the tourism dollar more evenly. It is also by partnering with local NGOs and development agencies in different destinations to create sustainable form of travel where there is no travel. So we've done that in several occasions. We've done that in Myanmar in the past, but also recently in Bosnia, a country that's rebuilding post-war, that wants to rebuild in a more sustainable form, and have approached us through the US aid to actually work together to help them to create those type of experiences and do capacity building with them. And finally, it's also through the work that we do with the Intrepid Foundation that supports local charities around the world, where we have the most amount of our trips and customers visiting, to support specific eco or social issues that we want to create awareness on, as well as raising funds for. And so that that starts with organization that helps young girls to get an education, for example, in Morocco, to organization that support wildlife conservation or nature conservation. So it's really very wide and it's very specific to the destinations issues that we want to tackle using tourism as a force for good.
Thank you. Steve, hello
Hi.
down there. Tell us about the work you do at GHD. How do you advise clients when it comes to supporting and building local communities?
I think really it's picking up what some of the comments that have been said earlier on. When we're thinking about working with clients in terms of city development or place development, it's really approaching that from the point of view of, I guess, all communities. And by that, we don't just mean a community that's resident in a particular place or that's looking to live in a city. We mean communities in its widest sense. So that is people that will be impacted by projects, people that will visit projects, people that will have a stake in the development of projects. And I think really at the heart of what we do is putting people first. So if you put people first in your considerations around any sort of city development or sort of project development, you start asking different questions. You start asking experience questions. What do local communities want out of a place? What do they need out of a place? What would visitors also want from the place? And picking up, what was said before, you really, most projects we get involved in, whether infrastructure or development or whether it's city development, is about developing an ecosystem. And that ecosystem's a kind of mixture between place in one hand, so the function of an area, but then the people. And it's kind of like how do those two coexist? If you look at the world's greatest cities from a visitor perspective, as much as anything else, there's often a correlation that these are great places to live. And you go there not only for culture, for heritage, but also just to experience. And that experience involves the community, the people of that city as well. So we always place that at the start of our projects. It's as much about people and people in a very broad sense as to how we start at the development and the conversations with our clients.
Yeah, thank you. Abraham, hi. So what is the Arab Regional Centre for World Heritage? Could you tell us a bit about it? And what are you responsible for when it comes to serving the 19 Arab states that come under your remit?
Yeah, hi. Good evening. It's a great pleasure to be here today. Again, I'm another substitute for Hiba Abdelaziz, who couldn't be here due to some travel issues. But it's great to be here among great panelists and speakers. Yes, the Arab Regional Center for World Heritage has been established in 2012 in Bahrain with two main objectives. First is to enhance the capacities of Arab professionals working in heritage conservation. And secondly, and most importantly, is to address the underrepresentation of Arab sites on UNESCO's World Heritage List. To put that into perspective, you can imagine that Italy alone has 56 sites on the list. The Arab region in total, including North Africa, West Asia, the Gulf countries, has only 88 sites. So it shows that there is a big gap between the Arab region and other regions on UNESCO's World Heritage List, and that itself creates a lot of issues in the future. So issues related to conservation, issues relating to protection of sites. So our aim was to improve that representation and to make sites more visible internationally, and to work with Arab countries in terms of management of sites that are already listed, and as well in the process of nomination files in the future. And I think I'm happy to see that Al-Dir'iyya is here as well, because Al-Dir'iyya is a great example, I think, of finding the right balance between development and protection, which is not easy. You can see a lot of issues in a lot of places around the world where some sites are removed from UNESCO's World Heritage List. And Liverpool, for example, recently has been delisted because of a project that has been built on Liverpool Pier football stadium, and that's why it created the site to be removed. So it's not an easy task to find the right balance between conservation and development. And so it's very encouraging to see some great examples in the region. Some of them are here in the ATM. The Arab Regional Center for World Heritage in Bahrain as well works with the countries in terms of building capacities. So we have a lack of maybe expertise in terms of conservation, in terms of management, in terms of as well documenting, digital documenting of sites. So those are all areas that we are trying to focus on. And the Convention of 1972 for World Heritage Protection, both cultural and natural, has a big focus on local communities. So we try through our programs to target the local communities and to work with them closely in terms of finding this ownership of the site. They need to feel empowered and the ownership of the sites, because at the end of the day, they are the main custodian of those spaces.
Thank you. Kieran, back to you. Could you speak a little bit about the impact that Diriyah has had on the local community in terms of economic opportunities and cultural revitalization? How are you planning for this to continue to grow in the future?
So the project itself is established around our UNESCO World Heritage Site of At-Turayf. And I absolutely agree that with UNESCO World Heritage Sites, there's a huge responsibility, not just to look after them, but to also celebrate them and bring them into an interpretive state that is useful for the community and for the next generations as well. So what we're doing with the Diriyah project is focusing on our community first. We have 100,000 inhabitants of Diriyah existing today. And as we build this urban city of the future, with its pedestrian nature and underground infrastructure, the quality of life and the green space, we have to think about how that can be brought to life with that local touch. A big part of who we are is being authentic. We're the birthplace of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the origin story behind the name Saudi. And so we have a huge weight of responsibility on our shoulders to celebrate it. To celebrate something with authenticity, you need to have authenticity. So the wonderful thing about Saudi, which delights me, and it's not just Diriyah, it's Saudi as a whole, is uniquely when you land in Saudi Arabia, you interact with Saudi Arabians, and by bucket loads. So you land at the airport, go through immigration, get into a taxi, go to the airport. You've already interacted with probably 3 or 4 Saudis along the way, just until you've checked in. When you come to Diriyah, we have a huge focus on our local community. Of the entire workforce, we're just under 2,000 people in our company building this city. That population is 85% Saudi. Of that population, 36% is female, and of that population, of our entire workforce, 14% are from Diriyah. So we've got a real strong mandate, which is to look local, to bring local artisans, local activities and activations to life. All of our tour guides at our UNESCO World Heritage Site are from Diriyah. So when they stand there and they say to you about their grandmother taking them to that coffee shop, that's real. And it really resonates. And so it establishes itself in so many ways. One, it amplifies pride in the community and with what we're doing. And there's a lot of respect towards us taking our UNESCO World Heritage Site and building a city around it. The second part to it is the authenticity, which is felt by visitors. And many people come to me and they say, that was amazing. You know, that tour guide, totally unscripted, totally off-piste, told me the most delightful thing and invited me to their house. And I went and I had a coffee with their grandmother. That's the richness. We see that, and so we embrace it. The Diriyah project in its current form, at its current state, is looking to employ 55,000 in terms of job creation in Diriyah for the people of Diriyah. Also, if you look at the ancillary structure around that and the jobs that are created in and around all of the infrastructure, it's in orders of magnitude by multipliers. So that's important for us. But having that authentic voice to govern it is even more important. And so whether that's a UNESCO heritage site or it's a museum, an art institute, an academy, a university, it's Diriyah first. And then after that, it's kingdom. So we have a lot of focus on the domestic market as well. I say 95% of everything that we do currently is embracing the domestic market. Please, Steve.
Jen, can I just pick up a point there? I think, sorry to kind of cut in there, but I think the point raised by the last 2 comments is very, very important. That link between sort of community culture and kind of then, I guess, the projects and the heritage. We do a lot with Indigenous communities, particularly out of Australia. We're an Australian company where we work a lot with the Aboriginal community, Torres Straits community. And the projects we work on there are very much around community empowerment. It's about connecting people and communities back together. The added advantage of that, or the benefit on top of that, then is that kind of wider communication and the tourism that can help support those projects, but it's a sort of secondary aspect. You have to create the authenticity, which is absolutely spot on, within those communities and approach it from that point of view. You then protect the culture and the heritage, but you're also taking the celebration forward, which is important.
And you're very right, Steve. I think one of the things to hold us to account, and we try to hold ourselves to account as much as possible, is I think you have to also have ingrained in your sensibilities each and every year, can you go back to your community and can you ask them, have we improved your quality of life? Are you happier this year compared to last year? And if they say yes, our kids are playing in these wonderful safe playgrounds now, and we've got green space where we can run on running tracks or cycle, those are the answers that need to come back to ascertain whether we've actually delivered what we hope to deliver.
Some really good points there. I'd like to, on the topic of Indigenous communities, go to Zina. What are you doing at Intrepid Travel to support Indigenous communities around the world? Tell us about the new tours you've launched this year.
Yeah. Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah.
I can.
Well, I was pleased that you mentioned your work in Australia, because we're an Australian company. So eventually, we've been doing operating trips overseas for the past 33 years outside of Australia. And it's only since the pandemic hit that we started to think about, well, we should probably do a bit more in our own country as a Australian business, especially with people wanting to travel more domestically. And so, as we've been developing a range of products in Australia, we looked into how we can work with the First Nations people and businesses and tour leaders to actually build those experiences so they are truly intrepid in a way, because that's the concept of working for us outside of our own headquarter country. That makes sense. So we've been developing a range of around 100 products across Australia. 50 of them include Indigenous-led experiences. So they would be things like a First Nation tour leader in a national park in Queensland that will take customers through the stories of native plants. So 80% of the biodiversity left in this world is actually in Indigenous lands. So if you think about it, if you support and protect Indigenous people around the world, we're actually supporting the planet and protecting the planet. And that's a stat you shared with me, Jenny. It's quite incredible. So this also has been taken outside of Australia, as we had teams that got inspired in Central America or in East Africa and have also been building more Indigenous-led experiences in their own country. We've got one in Costa Rica that is one of the smallest community in the world, called the Maliku, where we get our guests to spend some time with family-run businesses where they get to cook and eat with them and learn about their stories, their cultural heritage. It's all about preservation of their cultural heritage. So that's the kind of things that we've been pushing. Our goal is to have, specifically in Australia, every single of our trip, including one local, one Indigenous-led or First Nation-led experience. But outside of the tours itself, we also have innovated our what we call reconciliation action plan, where we have committed to simple things as acknowledgement of country. So every single board meeting, company updates, any meeting in the company starts with an acknowledgement of country. And that's not something that's quite popular in Australia. It's getting a bit more popular, and it's very important that we do that. We also have committed to onboard more people within our teams that will work for us, that come from First Nations or are from First Nations background, as well as support locally First Nations-led businesses for our business. So, for example, catering companies or the businesses we use just to run our business outside of our tours.
Thank you so much. I'd actually like to jump to Abraham at this stage. Sometimes there is a tension between conservation and community. What is UNESCO doing to protect local people as well as World Heritage sites? Is anyone allowed to live on them?
Yes, no, of course. It is a big issue worldwide, I think, in terms of having this role of local communities living within World Heritage premises. And I think that the issue has been ongoing since 1972, since the convention has been launched. But I think UNESCO is working well with Indigenous people, communities. They have a program dedicated towards the inclusion of those communities into the decisions that has been taken by UNESCO in terms of what sites are inscribed, what sites are put in danger, what sites need more protection, and they are part of that process. And I think the issues in the Arab region are quite different than other places around the world. For example, in Venice, which is a World Heritage Site, it is well known that people of Venice are quite worried about the future of the city due to climate change, due to the maybe over visitors and a high number of visitors every year that are damaging a lot of elements within the city of Venice. But I think in the Arab region we have the contrary. We have sites that are not visited enough. We have sites that are not exposed well and in the right manner. So that's why we are trying to work in terms of giving the right exposure, but as well working together on the ground with people to benefit from those sites. And I think we can see, like in the city of Marrakesh, in Petra in Jordan, other places where the local communities are working and are getting jobs and are working in terms of local handcrafts and music and intangible heritage. They are benefiting from those sites. And I think Petra is a great example in Jordan, where you can see the local people are relying on tourism. They're relying on cultural tourism for their livelihood. So, I think there are different challenges, but I think UNESCO are looking to ways to have an inclusive mechanism where everyone is have the sense of ownership over those places.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really good point. Steve, from tourism strategy to city planning, why are communities at the heart of sustainable development? Can you expand on it? Because I know you've already spoken to some extent on this. But...
Yeah, I think we have talked around it quite a lot, but for me, I think sustainability is, as we all know, it's a range of different criteria around, the productivity of places, the environment in places, the culture, etc. But I think just picking up what Ibrahim said, the local community is kind of the custodian of so much of places, whether they are kind of heritage places or cities more generally. And we've got to be about creating places that inspire people and places where people want to live, because then you are creating an environment in which activity happens. It's encouraged. It's ingrained within the place. You start creating. Culture is an ongoing thing. It's an evolution. It's grounded in history, but history is there, and it will continue into the future when we're sort of past the future, if that makes sense. So, communities evolve. They create that kind of environment. They sustain cities in so much as, day to day, the functioning of cities needs to be based around the communities. It's not based, you don't create a city as a tourism city. You create a city for somewhere to create communities for people to live in. So they're absolutely critical. And I think when we kind of look at communities in a balance of four things. A community or a place needs to be productive. So there needs to be sort of economic function, resilience around kind of the assets there, future shocks. It needs to be inspiring, and it needs to be connected. And that connectivity is not just transport connectivity, but it's kind of cultural connectivity as well. And everywhere is unique. No city is the same, no place is the same. But we believe if you can get the right balance of those four factors, you start creating livable places where communities will flourish, and then your sustainability will be almost a natural occurrence. There's a lot of hard work behind that, but if you think about it in those terms, then I think you start, you make a big leap to get there. But yeah, community's at the heart of everything for us, and yeah, it needs to be taken very, very seriously.
Thank you. Now, it sounds sort of easy to build a city from scratch. But Kieran, let's come back to you. Diriyah Gate is, I understand, about 15 minutes northwest of Riyadh.
West,
West of Riyadh, and it's going to be about 7 square kilometers in terms of its footprint when it's completed. Now, I understand the project has required the rehousing of some residents and demolition of homes. Could you tell us about the relocation scheme that you have in place for these people?
Sure. So, firstly, actually, just picking up on something that Steve said, because it's really, he said it beautifully and summarized the approach beautifully to make sure that you're holding yourself to account and measuring what you do sustainably. At the moment, we're the proof of that, because we're doing it. And we opened a few assets already last year as one of the first giga projects to do so, embracing the community. And in order to do that, we've had to reutilize the urban space that existed before the project was finalized in its form it is today. The first phase of Diriyah focuses on the land which is directly adjacent to our UNESCO World Heritage Site. When it comes to anybody who's being affected by the development, we have to work together with the community. If you don't, it will never work. So embracing the community and understanding their needs, their desires, incorporating those needs and desires into the urban plan, into that master plan, so that you can offer a very viable and a very desirable possibility for them to embrace and to take hold. And they have to believe in it as well. So they have to be part of that dialogue. So we speak to the community. We are very focused on our community and engaged with them. Not only do we interact with our community at moments such as that, but we interact with them all the time. We have an urban municipality affairs department where they're coming to us for really simple things on their existing homes and their existing requirements each and every day. So we have that rapport, we have that dialogue, and we work as well as we can. The key to all of this is working with our counterparts in the ministries, in the municipalities, the government, and we try to work as best we can to make sure that nobody feels that they are encumbered, and that if they are part of that journey and they do believe in it and they do see something which returns value for them, then they feel like it's justified and the inconvenience was justifiable.
So did they get relocated and given a new home somewhere nearby?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. I think that's really important to think about and understand. Now Zina, what are you doing to empower women specifically in local communities and also in the wider travel industry in general?
Sure. Is this working? Yeah. I thought I'd start sharing a few statistics just to give an idea of the size of the opportunity to really use travel to empower women around the world. So 1 in 10 travel employs 1 in 10 people around the world. This year, it's estimated that 1 in 3 new jobs are created in travel and tourism due to the recovery post-pandemic. 53 or 54% of the workforce in travel is women versus 39% in wider economy. 25% of Ministry of Tourism are women. I was a bit sad we didn't see any in the previous panel, but it is a stat, and that's versus 20% of wider ministries. What else? The gender pay gap is actually lower in travel. So women are paid still less, but a bit less than the industries. And then the best one is above 80% of the travel purchase are done by women, whether it's for them or for their family. They are the decision maker. So I think if you take all of these statistics together, there's a real opportunity to use travel as the one industry in the world to reduce gender inequalities. And so what we've been doing about this in our business, first of all, we realized we were not perfect and we had a lot of improvement to make, especially as we entered the B Corp certification a few years ago, realized that, for example, across the potentially 1,000 tour leaders around the world, less than 20% were women. So we had improvements to make. So we set goals to ourselves to double that number, which we achieved a year before our target. And that involved lobbying some governments in some conservative countries. It involved doing training, mentoring in others. So for example, we never had female guide in India or in Morocco, and now we have, and we're the largest employees of female guides. We also work with our team in Australia that looks after supply chain management to find ways to identify women across destinations to be able to onboard them in our supply chain and support them. We work with non-for-profit as well that I mentioned either support young girl education or create meaningful job for women. It can be training centers that run as restaurants, for example. We've got some of those. So really looking into how we can make an impact to support women through the supply chain. And obviously in our offices as well, we've got a female leadership program to help women, to grow in the career within the travel industry and get to core management team leadership positions, because we also are not balanced yet. So we're trying to really find ways to get more and more women to move up in the career in our own business. And so that's to me a huge opportunity to support women in communities using travel. And there's just it's there. It's just about the different steps that businesses can take to make an impact.
Jenny, can I pick up on something that Zena
Absolutely.
said? The great thing about these statistics is that they have even deeper meaning. Take, for example, Saudi Arabia, which has only gone on a recent journey for travel and tourism. And then take a project like ours. We are fundamentally a development company where 36% of our employees are female and 16% of are in senior levels of senior positions in the organization. And we're a development company that's building towards the travel and tourism industry in Saudi Arabia. So the knock-on effect of this approach within tourism is incredible. And if it can see its way into development firms, imagine how that can really substantially change the landscape as we know it. And the fact that we are on equal pay as well within our organization, regardless of gender, is another testament to the power that tourism has to change that and focus on a gender balance.
Absolutely. And last little point, our industry has very low entry barrier. You don't need to have a degree to start a job in travel industry, while you can start and then go up the levels. So that's also very easy because women are less educated than men across the world, as we know, unfortunately. So we've got a real opportunity to make a change, especially when you come to developing countries and those communities where women don't have access to education, but they still can work in tourism because they can cook, because they can clean, they can guide, they can do jobs that we can teach them to do, and that's a first step.
Yeah, absolutely. And it fills me with a lot of hope, actually. So many opportunities. Now, we're running out of time, but I really want to come back to Steve. I'm a trend forecaster, and I love thinking about the future. Could you describe what your vision for a utopian city of the future?
No.
Try, please. What ingredients would it have?
Maybe that's a question for Dora Gate. We've, as part of our Futures Transformation Initiative, we've thought about this a lot, and our initial reaction was to go down, it's going to look like this, transport's going to be like that, and trying to see the kind of, have a vision in our minds of what the future will be. And I don't think you can do that. I think what I do, so I would describe the utopian city as being somewhere that is inspiring, that celebrates its culture and its community, and somewhere that really, I guess, inspires people to live and visit. Somewhere that really kind of taps into the soul of the communities and the people there. How that looks, I don't think you can say. Cities evolve. Milan wasn't built with a view to what it will be today. It was built because, it's a functioning city for the time that it's being developed. Dubai is, in world terms, a new city. You can see, I lived here for 10 years. You can see how, month by month it's evolving and changing and moves from one stage of maturity to the next. Dora Gate will go through that, is going through that process as it's kind of reimagine its future. So I don't want to put physical constraints on it. I think it has to be somewhere that inspires. And if it's inspiring, it will be and it will create a culture that is fantastic.
I love that. Thank you for that brilliant answer. Now, to finish up, I'd like to ask Ibrahim about what should be done to protect intangible heritage, such as indigenous recipes, dances, and artisan crafts.
Yes, I think this is a very important question, especially relating to the role of intangible heritage within cultural heritage. And I think it all starts with capacity building, sharing knowledge through generations. I think sometimes some of these traditions get lost from generation to generation. So it's very important to offer incentives as well to people to carry on practicing those intangible heritage and giving back to the younger population in terms to educate and to keep this practice ongoing for generations to come. And I think in Bahrain, for example, we have a great example where we have a school on intangible heritage offering incentives by selling some of those products, especially with handcrafts and other intangible heritage, to give back to the community to make sure that this practice is still there, still managed, and still in practice. Because we are, I think, in a time where there are a lot of distractions around. And for the younger generations, those intangible heritage elements are not that attractive in terms of financial pay as well. So if we offer enough incentives, capacity building, I think we should be able to keep some of these practices alive.
So important. Yes, if we lose those things, the world will be poorer for it. Now, with 10 seconds to go, I'm very happy to be bang on time. Thank you so much for your attention and to our fantastic panelists today. I've learned so much. It's been brilliant, so thank you very much.